So today, going to talk about another unique project that we have undertaken at our Kemps Creek Resource Recovery Park, and it's a project that probably ticks all the right boxes, but has a number of challenges through the process that we needed to go through as well. So the Kemps Creek Resource Recovery Park consists of a dry waste landfill and an MSW processing facility, a landfill gas to power and a landfill gas to power generation facility, which was constructed late last year. The landfill itself is a general solid waste landfill. It also has the only restricted waste landfill cell in New South Wales, and to date there's over 8 million tonnes of waste within that landfill. Also on site is the Suez Alternative Waste Treatment Facility, or SALT. It's a mechanical biological treatment facility, has a capacity of 135,000 tonnes per year, and exceeds the diversion rate of greater than 55%. It does FOGO processing and MSW processing, and our key partners, Penrith and Liverpool, are part of that. Penrith contract is about 37,000 tonnes of FOGO per year, and Liverpool's in excess of 50,000 tonnes of MSW each year. More recently, as last year, in November, we commissioned a new landfill gas to power generation facility. It's a long-term contract or agreement with AGL, and there's 2.8 megawatts generation capacity at that particular facility. Part of our site is obviously the landfill gas collection process that we need to undertake. There's over 82 gas wells on site, 11 gas trenches, and all of this infrastructure is owned and operated by Suez, and I'll come back to that later in the session. Just leading on to further discussion about a short presentation about landfill.
Smart cells work like a giant battery, generating biogas, which is harnessed into electricity. Biogas is created when the organic matter in waste breaks down. Rather than being released into the atmosphere, smart cells capture this natural gas using a system of connected biogas wells, which transport the gas to power stations to be converted into electricity and fed into the surrounding power grid.
That final image you saw there was actually our facility at Lucas Heights. We've got 20 engines located at Lucas Heights 1 and Lucas Heights 2 with a capacity of 22 megawatts. Back to Kemps Creek. So some of the key features of this particular operation is that AGL owns and operates the facility. It's powered by the landfill gas, and it supplies electricity to the SALT infrastructure. Other aspects of this key project was that we actually utilised some assets that had been sitting at Spring Farm for a number of years and had not been used. So it was a unique opportunity to pick up those assets, relocate them to Kemps Creek, and put them to use. So there's two 1.4 megawatt Yembaker engines, and the gas conditioning unit came from Spring Farm. In addition to that, the infrastructure consists of a 2,000 cubic metre an hour flare that was already existing on the site, and there's a grid connection to the SALT facility should the engines be offline. Under the arrangement, AGL has the obligation to construct and operate the facility. They've also got an obligation to deliver the electricity to SALT. What are the benefits to AGL? Well, there's a long-term contract with Suez that underpins the capital investment that they've undertaken to develop this facility. Any excess electricity that they generate that's not required at SALT, they deliver back to the grid. And it supports AGL's commitment to a long-term developing their renewable energy production capacity in Australia. What were Suez obligations? Well, we had an obligation to deliver a minimum quantity of landfill gas. Pleased to say that we're well in excess of that, so it hasn't been an issue, but it was certainly a negotiation point through the contract. We have the responsibility of installing and maintaining the gas collection infrastructure. We've got an obligation to purchase a minimum amount of electricity from AGL to power the SALT facility, and we have to maintain and operate the flare. Now, this going back to the infrastructure earlier, what are the benefits of that? Well, what it is for us, it's a different structure to the way that most landfill gas structures, landfill gas collection and destruction projects work. But we actually maintain control of all of the landfill gas extraction infrastructure, and that gives us the control and the responsibility for managing our environmental obligations. So it's a unique opportunity. Given current electricity prices and the discussion around electricity, well, I'm pleased to say that we've actually locked in a long-term electricity price for the next 15 years. And finally, as part of this structure, any destruction of landfill gas or methane under the Emissions Reduction Fund, we are the beneficiaries of the ACCUs generated. Again, a different structure to a number of the other arrangements that landfill gas projects are built around. What were some of the challenges? Well, certainly financial, and particularly from both parties. It took a number of years to come up with the right contract. And when I took the project to our review team and the CFO, and he's looking and said, well, these numbers aren't all that great. The numbers are right, they're a benefit to the organisation, but it was all the additional benefits that came along with it. It's actually the right project to do. It was reusing some assets. We had the landfill gas, we had the demand, and we needed to package it all together. So it actually took a long time to package the contract together. During the time of contract negotiations, there was quite an upheaval in the carbon legislation, and that upheaval hasn't gone away yet. It's just static for a little bit at the moment. But I think the climate review policy is due the end of this week. So if anybody wants to comment to the feds about that, you've got another few days to respond. Anybody who's ever built or connected a landfill gas or any power generation facility to the grid will know the challenges involved with dealing with the network providers. It's a significant challenge. Fortunately for me, it wasn't me that was directly involved, so we had the primary contract with AGL, and they had subcontracted most of this work to Clark Energy, who ultimately did a good job and got the project through. A couple of the other challenges was around reusing existing assets. Most projects that we develop, we actually pick up, we purchase new assets, so we've got a warranty and a guarantee that sits behind those new assets. But these assets had been used. They'd been run at Spring Farm for a number of years. They'd been sitting idle for 5 or 6 years, and now we were picking up those engines and installing them into a new facility. And then where was the warranty obligations around that? So we relied significantly on the pre-assessment condition reports that were done to identify any upgrades to the infrastructure or the machine engines before we progressed with the project. And finally, the construction program and commissioning can always be a challenge. I'd like to say that again with AGL and Clark Energy, the construction program and commissioning went relatively smoothly. I think we were a few weeks behind on the final commissioning, but overall it went very well. Going forward, there's still risks. We still have uncertain times around our carbon legislation. We still have uncertain times about the RET, although both sides of government currently have an agreement in place, but that could change at any time. Some challenges for us is obviously if the engines are down. We actually make some savings when the engines are actually operating, so we want to make sure that those engines are operating as much as they can. And we've also got the obligation to supply gas to the facility, and to date we have no issues in meeting that requirement. What are some of the opportunities? Now that the infrastructure is built, we actually are looking at whether we can capture the waste heat off these engines and use them in the salt composting facility to improve that process even further. So the results thus far, pretty good I think. So we commissioned in November, and through December to February, I should have some more data, but that's the data I've got to date, 3.3 million cubic metres of landfill gas captured. 60% of that was actually used for the electricity generation, and 40% was destroyed by flare. So it proves that we have sufficient landfill gas supply to the facility. And during January and February, after the commissioning phase, we're running at 97-98% of supply of electricity demand from salt is being supplied by the facility, which is a great story. It's a really good outcome. Obviously, there's times there, and some of those disruptions were actually network disruptions, not necessarily power generation facility disruptions. So what are we doing? We've got a landfill. We deposit waste in the landfill decomposes. We then capture the landfill gas that's generated. We deliver that to a renewable energy facility. We then create the electricity. The electricity is then powering our salt processing facility. And with that salt processing facility, we're actually diverting waste from landfill. We're assisting our councils build on their commitments and their wishes, and we're using the salt facility and renewable energy and our Kemps Creek Resource Recovery Park precinct as a solution for all of our needs. Thank you for your time.